Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Abby. If you haven't seen part 1 in this series, you might want to go back and watch that because this video is actually part 2 to my check ride. This one's going to be more about the flying portion of it and it's not about the oral. So that is a video that I'm going to link down below. Second part of the check ride is the flying portion, of course, which is really nerve-wracking, but I was ready. I knew we were gonna fly. The weather was beautiful. There's nothing wrong with it. It wasn't windy, but it was really hot and turbulent and bumpy. It was a really hot day. I think it was around 90 Fahrenheit or 85 Fahrenheit. So the pattern wasn't too crowded. There weren't too many students out flying. So I did the weight and balance and I made a mistake on the weight and balance. And if you wanna see more about that, I talked about that in my first video. It was a pretty big mistake. Before I started on the pre-flight, he let me choose and make the decision if I wanted to do my 3 required takeoffs and landings in the beginning of the flying portion or at the end when we came back to the airport. Really didn't want to do them after we came back because I knew I would be tired from doing all the other procedures and maneuvers and then have to come back and do 3 landings. I knew I was just going to be way too tired, so I chose to do them in the beginning. Y'all. Before we skip ahead of ourselves and talk about the landings, I'm going to talk about the pre-flight. So the pre-flight was good. Check the ailerons and check to make sure nothing was loose. So if you speed through it because you're nervous, that's understandable, but the DPE, the examiner's probably going to say something like, you're not actually checking it, you're running around in a circle. So after the pre-flight, we got started to do the 3 required takeoffs and landings, and this was at my home airport where I'm used to training, so that was really nice that we didn't decide to do it somewhere else at another airport. Very first takeoff was a soft field takeoff, and this didn't feel good because that ain't my best takeoff. That was the soft field takeoff and landing are my worst landings. Even today, they're my worst. In a tail wheel, I'm actually okay at them, but in the tricycle gear and the 152, they were not my best landing. So we started off with that and I was nervous, and we did soft field takeoff to soft field landing. Then the second one was short field takeoff to short field landing. The third one was a regular takeoff, and we went to the practice area and we started doing maneuvers. It's a little hard to remember the exact placement of the procedures that he had me do, but I will say that I had a little reference of notes things because the whole check ride is open book. Like, you can bring your notes. Amen. And one thing you need to remember is to always be set up for the maneuver and to do your clearing turns. Before we get any further into this part, do your clearing turns before every maneuver, because if you don't, that's an automatic fail. Y'all, there was not one maneuver that we did not do. Wait, I lied, just kidding. The one thing we didn't do was a power on stall. We started with steep turns first, which again, is my weakest points were soft field takeoff and landings and steep turns. So we started with the 2 things that I suck at. My first left steep turn was pretty bad. He had me redo it to the other side and I was a lot better doing it on the other side. And we went into slow flight. So we did slow flight, and from slow flight, because you're already going slow and you're configured to do a power off stall. Slow flight, power off stall, from that back to slow flight, and then the really shallow turns we have to be really careful turning in slow flight because you can stall. From there we did the emergency engine out and diversions, so the emergency stuff. And on the way back to the airport we did S turns over a road that he picked out, turns around a point. He was just asking questions about the terrain and about what frequency, and all of this I was familiar with because that was the area that I trained in. And we also did slips on the way back to the airport. He told me he was going to pull the engine and give me an engine out, which my CFI never ever did. That was really nice that he gave me so much time. So I know all examiners are different, but my examiner gave me a lot of time and he talked in a really calm voice, and I always felt okay asking him to clarify because I didn't feel in a rush to have to just do everything and mess up. So a lot of people say don't be rushed when you're in it to just do whatever they want you to do, because to just do a really crappy maneuver because you're so stressed out and so full of adrenaline and you just want to give them what they want right away, and then you're not set up for the maneuver. I didn't know where to land when he pulled it, so he pulled it and it felt like 8 minutes, but I knew it was probably only about 40 seconds, of course, but it feels so much longer when you're in an emergency situation, right? So I was looking on where to land off the starboard side, the right side, near him, so I almost couldn't see it, but I tilted the plane a little bit and then I saw it. I knew he was trying to be sneaky. I saw it. It was wooded, so it was a grass strip and really narrow, and we would have made it. And right as we were maybe a couple feet AGL above the runway, he told me to put the power in and we took off. So we didn't actually land, but we were very close to landing, and he knew that we would have made it in a real emergency. So we did the diversion, which was also another thing I was super worried about. I didn't practice any of my private pilot with a GPS. I did it all on paper, the traditional way in pilotage, so I knew I would have to use pilotage and whatever GPS knowledge I have in my brain to divert. And he told us to divert to an airport, and I got confused with the name of another airport, and he told me twice.
It's not that airport, it's this one.
And I was just nervous, so my brain was dyslexic and mixing up his words. And I measured with my thumb. You know how many nautical miles your thumb or your hand is? And I just measured like that really quick on the sectional. I pulled it out and measured it. I said yes right away. I knew we would have enough fuel to land there. They just want to check to make sure that you know the fuel requirements of your plane. So that was pretty quickly. It would have been even quicker of a diversion if I would have listened to him and realized that he was saying the airport that is here, not the airport that was 80 nautical miles away. I'm gonna be prideful on this one point in this one video. The turns around a point were pretty decently good. And we were back and we were really sweaty and he was helping me hold the windows open. It was like a stinking sauna. I went through the checklist, I turned everything off totally normal, just exactly as my CFI taught me in every lesson I've done. And when we got out, he didn't help me push it back. He actually went to over and he shook my hand and he said, "You passed. I'm gonna go print the papers in the office while you push this back." Super sweaty. I think I had like a bun and I was wearing these like super goofy glasses from the Lost and Found at the airport, and they helped me push it back. And then paperwork took a while. He was debriefing and he did not like my soft field landing or takeoff. He did not like my steep turns. I wasn't too crushed because everything he told me he didn't like, I already expected that he wouldn't really like because I knew they were my weaker points. I got ready for the check ride on so little time. I took it at about 43 hours, I think. I knew I wasn't gonna have everything perfect. He said one of the biggest compliments was he really liked my short field, and he said, honestly, that's more important to me that you can land in a short field than in a soft field, because a short field, sometimes you'll be going to a runway that's not as long, and if you're a student pilot that always does super long landings, you're not gonna be prepared. So he said he liked that I could land on a short field. Final things I want to mention, it was a very hot, very bumpy day because I did it in summer. If you were to do it in winter, you might have to worry about winds, but the air would be a lot smoother, it would be a lot calmer. Number 2, we did do every single maneuver except power on stalls. Number 3, the oral portion was about 3 hours, and then the flying portion was about 2.6 of total flight time. But at the end of the day, it was an all day thing. It was about 8 hours because I showed up there at 8 a.m. to get prepared early. He showed up at 9 a.m. and we finished at 4:35. So a lot of the time we were talking and he was just telling me stories, and the 4:30 was, we did finish around 2 p.m. but we kind of talked and debriefed and shared stories. So I don't expect yours to take that long, and it was a really good time. It really felt like any lesson I would have gone on with my CFI. It felt exactly like that. And the number one rule that I would tell to anybody is just pretend that it's your flight instructor or your mom or someone and you really want to impress them and make them feel safe. Just make sure you don't do anything to freak them out. Just think that if you were in a plane and some little punk was flying it, what would make you feel really safe? You would feel really safe if they did clearing turns. You would feel really safe if they went slowly. You'd feel really safe if they seemed to have control and not super visibly nervous as I was. Tell yourself you know all of this. You know how to do it. Because the days leading up to the check ride, I didn't really talk about this in my videos, but on the personal side, from my perspective, I had such low confidence in my flying the weeks leading up to it. I don't know why. Kind of imposter syndrome, I think, and just the fear of never having taken a check ride before. I didn't know what to expect, but I think a lot of it was imposter syndrome. So imposter syndrome is definitely real. I learned so much, and I feel like a lot of the mistakes I did make were out of nervousness, because a lot of the flights that I did afterwards, they're almost as good as my confidence level. So I would say just don't let imposter syndrome get to you. Don't overestimate the check ride, but also know that you're probably overestimating it. That's what a lot of people told me, and I still overestimated it. Afterwards, I was kind of thinking that wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. It was actually enjoyable if I didn't drink 14 gallons of coffee. Thanks so much for watching. I know I didn't answer all of your questions, and if you have any left, please drop them down in the comments below. I read all of your questions and try to respond to them. Also, there is an email link down below, so if you give me your email and your first name, I will send you this PDF that I put on Google Docs, which is basically an essay of my whole check ride that I typed up, but I'm not gonna make it public on YouTube or anything. So if you want it, you gotta give me your email and your first name and I'll send it over to you. Thanks so much for watching. I love you all. Hope you're having a good week. See you in the next video. Bye. Waiting for that plane to pass over right now. Okay, they're watching Winnie the Pooh. I lost my train of thought. The practice area, and then the first thing he did there was steep turns. Oh, what was I saying? I was like, bro, I am not good at this. And that was really kind of like an ego crusher. But I was like, well, if he doesn't call quits, if he doesn't pull the white card on me now, and tell us to go back to the airport and just end everything, then that means I pass because these are my worst things.